Drivers like Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo have been on top of the racing world and won some of the biggest events in it. But there is a domain of racing that they've both mentioned that they'll never compete in, and that's oval racing. These guys are guys who have competed in Monaco, where the walls seem to close in on you, Spa, where the fast sweeping corners all come at you at once, and plenty of other treacherous courses, but a left turn genuinely terrifies them. But why is that? Tracks with no sharp turns, no elevation changes, and no complexity to the viewing eye, why do ovals create so much fear in drivers around the globe? Here specifically, I'm talking about IndyCar, because it relates in most terms of open wheel racing, and it is specifically what these guys have said that they won't do. To begin with, the concept of an oval is actually a lot more deceiving than you may think. To a casual viewer, it's pretty simple. You go fast, you turn left, and you repeat. But under the microscope, there's a lot more to it. In the spirit of the Indy 500, we'll use it as an example, where in qualifying, drivers are pushing the limits of up to 240 miles per hour and getting inches away from the wall. And here, there's no runoff. Contrary to other series having gravel traps or grass to slow your crash, that just doesn't exist. One small mistake on an oval, and that isn't a barrier of last resort, it's an immediate consequence of up to 100 Gs of force. To put that in perspective, 100 Gs, if you remember Max Verstappen's crash he had in 2021 at Silverstone, that was clocked between 50 and 60 Gs, so double that is genuinely terrifying. Also, the machinery being used also changes the experience massively, especially under the stakes. Indy cars don't have power steering, meaning it's a much more physical battle to turn the wheel, and trying to catch a spin is extremely difficult. Another part that plays into that is the banking of the corners. Taking the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for example, the corners are banked at 9.2 degrees. The way it works is that in a flat corner, the aerodynamics on the car are built to keep the car grounded, and the front tires are expected to do 100% of the work on changing the direction. But in banked corners, the tilt is there to help push the car around the corner, and although this seems pretty helpful, the speed changes that. When you combine speed and banking, the tires are effectively being smashed into the asphalt by the aerodynamic physics, and steering becomes incredibly hard. The key point here is that although ovals may seem friendly from the outside, under the hood there's a lot going on, but there is plenty more that arises when other cars are on track. The concept of dirty air is one that many people have heard of, but not really understand. In a way, it's very similar to what you see on boats with water. I'm sure many of you have seen a speedboat go on the water fast, and behind it, it creates a wake. And if another boat were to try and go as fast within that wake, it would be a lot more difficult, right? Well, the same concept applies to race cars, but here it's with air, as uninterrupted air is what these cars are built to drive in. But chaotic, turbulent air coming off the car in front, aka the wake in this scenario, makes it a lot tougher. Now on normal road courses and such, this only becomes a large variable in corners, where downforce becomes the main focus. But on ovals, with the banking, this is constant. This also does create the concept of drafting, which is a huge benefit on the straights, but it's extremely hard to control in the corners. Similarly, tire degradation is also massively different on ovals. On a course where all turns are left, the left tires are taking a much larger beating than the right tires, which makes a pretty big management load over 200 laps. Now all these factors are not to say that other drivers around the motorsport world cannot drive on ovals, because many have. It is just a fear factor that some drivers don't want to approach. Take multiple past F1 drivers in IndyCar right now, like Romain Grosjean, Mick Schumacher, and Marcus Ericsson, and even Fernando Alonso, who has raced the 500 on multiple occasions. All of these guys have seen different levels of success on ovals, scaling from Mick Schumacher racing in his first Indy 500 this year, and Marcus Ericsson winning the 500 back in 2022. But all of them have mentioned the big jump. Take Romain Grosjean for example, who may have ended his F1 career with his fireball crash, but right when he stepped into IndyCar in his first oval test he said, "Everyone who thinks it's easy to run ovals is absolutely mistaken. It is tough and requires a different feeling, but I must say I'm enjoying it. I'm looking forward to discovering more. The racing is going to be a very exciting part. Every time you go into a corner, it's a high-speed corner and it's fun, but it keeps the adrenaline going." The point behind saying this is not to say that ovals are particularly harder than anything else, just more than anything, they're different. In typical scenarios, the safer option is not to slow down, it's to go faster, because slowing down causes instability instead of a safety net. So the counterintuitive nature of driving ovals is just new to many. It's kind of like in Cars, where Lightning McQueen was told to turn right to go left. It sounds wrong at first, but it's very situational to the type of racing that these cars are in, so it goes against what these drivers typically know. Fernando Alonso, for example, didn't do too hot in the Indy 500, where he attempted it 2 times, in 2017 and 2019, in Trace of the Triple Crown. In 2017, he genuinely was one of the fastest cars on track, but an engine failure halted his attempt, and in 2019, he actually didn't qualify for the race at all. In 2017, it was really impressive for a first-time oval driver to do what he did, and it showed the level of preparation, and 2019 wasn't great, but his car was definitely less competitive. But both attempts definitely showed that it's possible to make the shift. It just takes preparation. Let's go into detail, specifically at IMS, where the Indy 500 is raced, and it's known to be one of the hardest ovals to race on, despite not necessarily being the fastest. IMS has characteristics that are not matched by any other track, like its width, length of the straights, and generally gentle banking compared to other ovals. This leads to its nature of having 33 cars in the race, more than any other races, and therefore, a different level of traffic management that has to be added to the equation. The moment the green flag flies, you have 11 rows of 3 cars barreling around the speedway, and the first few laps are some of the most dangerous minutes in motorsport. Crashes are inevitable, and the scale at which they can be are uncapped. Even if the drivers do make it through the opening, they're constantly pushing through lap traffic, who are also not required to concede position, meaning it's constant racing for 200 laps. Overall, it's genuinely a very hectic race, and different from anything else, but that's not to say that it can't be conquered. There are plenty of drivers in the world that are considered to be oval specialists, but specifically looking at IndyCar, names like Tony Kanaan, Helio Castroneves, and Ryan Hunter-Reay are all names of drivers who have thrived at ovals. As corny as it may sound, the danger of ovals never really goes away, even to these guys, but it's more about acceptance of the danger. No matter how much time you have driving on ovals, the walls never move, but more trust within the car is the difference maker, and a reason why many drivers can't overcome their fear. It's definitely not easy to do, and many IndyCar drivers who dominate on road and street courses don't always get in grips with the ovals. A dominant majority of these guys tend to be those who come from a European racing background and never really grew up driving on ovals, so it does make plenty of sense that there isn't a level of comfort there. The key point here is that mastery on ovals doesn't just come naturally, and it's not about bravery, it's about trust, and that simply isn't something that can just be built overnight, especially at these speeds. That being said, although it's labeled as a fear, many drivers around the world are being very rational by saying they don't want to race on ovals. Statistics do show that incidents are more prevalent and more volatile on ovals compared to road course races, meaning there is inherently more danger. Also here, the incidents are met with harder impacts and more injuries. 230 miles per hour into a concrete wall is nothing small, and even though in recent years safety has been ramped up a ton, drivers are definitely a lot more prone to injury here than other places. For example, in 2015, James Hinchcliffe was a veteran on ovals, and had one win in the past at one, but due to a suspension failure during Friday practice in the Indy 500, he sustained a massive crash, and one of the suspension pieces made its way into the cockpit and punctured his thigh and severed an artery. Fortunately, he ended up recovering well and even took pole at the 500 the following year, but it shows the severity of how things can go wrong at such high speeds and on the limit. For a more recent example, we can look back to last week, with Alexander Rossi's crash in practice. Rossi's incident was pretty big, and he needed minor surgeries in his ankle and his hand, but he still is scheduled to take part in the race at the time of me recording this. My main point here is that the ovals don't care who you are or how much experience you have, things can go wrong fast, even with the many safety improvements that have been made, so the fear is more than rational. As it stands, it actually makes sense why the biggest names like Max Verstappen say no to the Indy 500. The answer to why has nothing to do with a lack of bravery, as he races at incredible speeds in other domains, but it's more to do that ovals are simply just different. A different relationship with speed and the car is required, and the risk is incredibly high, no matter your level of experience. That leaves me with one question, not to oval racers, not to those afraid, but to you. Given everything you now know about ovals and what they demand, do they feel more or less impressive than before you clicked on this video?